training and realistic role plays. And so I like to think of Lucy as, I know we'll talk more about it, but like a flight simulator, right? You don't let a pilot get into a cockpit and take off a plane. You put them into a flight simulator. And that's really what Lucy is, a flight simulator, as you said, a virtual client or a virtual patient.
Yeah, and I think that we've seen psychedelic assisted therapy in the underground in particular, have obviously immense benefits when working with well-trained and, thoroughly vetted practitioners, but those who jump right into it without having done both extensive training, but also having actually sat with real people, you can never really prepare yourself for that first time sitting with a client. And we're witnessing both, as Max opened up with, a lot of interest and a lot of hesitancy surrounding AI use, both in healthcare in general, but in particular in the psychedelic space. I will say that this particular article for Double Blind generated, an enormous amount of buzz, but also, a considerable amount of pushback and trepidation. One of the areas being the data privacy side. And so we'll get to, the development of Lucy and Dr. Felix Scholler, who I think deserves, an immense shout out and gratitude from the entire field for the work that it's taken to develop this product. But I think it's really important to start by addressing that elephant in the room. How has Fireside approached the data privacy question in developing Lucy, and what has that process looked like step by step?
Yeah, it's such a big question, and I'll start by saying that Fireside Project trains Lucy using anonymized, so fully anonymized conversations, meaning fully de-identified and voices obfuscated conversations to train Lucy. And why is that? It's because a flight simulator is only as good as the real world scenarios that it's testing the pilot on. And so because we have so many real world scenarios from the support line, that's what we've used to train Lucy. And that's, I think, what really gives us like a big advantage because of how unique psychedelic experiences are. So then the question is, well, what was the process that we followed to get to the point where we were recording conversations? So I should say, I'll back up like 5 years. When Fireside Project started, we had a whole series of non-connected systems that formed the support line, and it was clunky and difficult to use. We had one phone system, one text message system, one survey system, one call log system, one internal conversation system. It was all a nightmare. And so we basically set out to build a custom software platform that we call FirePad. And it basically took us like a full 3 years where everything is integrated. And it's amazing. It's how volunteers learn. It's how we can keep providing better support. And what we wanted to do before we started, recording conversations is to really build out like the most robust process that we could from beginning to end to make sure that we're honoring, the trust that our callers put in us, while also honoring, as I said a moment ago, this ethical duty to keep doing a better and better job with training. So first, of course, is the issue of consent and opt-out, right? This is a big one. And all of our callers receive a disclaimer upfront that says we record calls for training purposes. And of course, we acknowledge that many of our callers by design are on psychedelics. And so that alone is not sufficient consent. And then the day after every conversation, callers receive, again, automatically via FirePad, a text message that says, hey, we recorded your conversation for training purposes. If you'd like to delete it, just check this box. And if they do that, the box is automatically deleted. So there's the notice up front, and there's the notice after. But I just want to speak to the anonymization because I think it's related. When we're talking about meaningful consent, like what is meaningful consent? It's connected to the consent itself. It's connected to what data is actually stored and what happens with that data, right? So in other words, this would be a totally different discussion if Fireside Project wasn't anonymizing conversations and was selling them to third parties or licensing them or doing so many of the other really abhorrent things that big data companies do. So what does Fireside Project do? First is anonymization, right? So this is regardless of whether there's consent. I mean, there's no circumstance in which Fireside Project doesn't anonymize conversations. So how does that happen? First, it's through this amazing software that strips out personal information. And what makes it amazing is it can tell the difference between, for example, Joshua White, my name, which would get stripped out, and the clouds are white, which would not get stripped out. So first is anonymization. Then second is throwing out the phone number, right? We decouple after a very short time the phone number from the conversation itself. So that's the second step. And then the third step is what we call obfuscation. This is, or we don't call it that, but that's what it's called in the world of software. And what obfuscation means, it's this incredible state-of-the-art technology where it basically means distorting your voice beyond recognition while preserving the emotionality and the tonality, because that's what's so rich for training. So all of those things happen. And on top of it, the data doesn't leave Fireside Project. It's not sold, it's not licensed, it doesn't go to OpenAI, it doesn't go to Claude or any other thing. It stays exclusively within the four walls of Fireside Project. So those are the kind of like core steps that we take to really, protect our callers' identities while, while satisfying our duty to keep getting better at training. And I would just love to say one other thing, Jack, if I could, which is we started recording conversations in May 2024. And before we did that, of course, transparency is part of trust, and trust is all we have at Fireside Project. And so we actually put out a press release saying Fireside Project is going to be recording anonymized conversation for training purposes. We actually pitched dozens of press outlets to say, will you please do an article about the fact that we are recording anonymized conversations? And even independent of Lucy, the recorded conversations have been, and anonymized conversations have been foundational to how we do our training. So what does that mean? For example, right, it used to be that new volunteers very, very, very understandably were kind of freaked out by the fact that some of our callers may be considering dying by suicide or may be in need of immediate medical danger, in which case they have to get connected to 911 or 988. And so now with recorded conversations, we can play examples for volunteers in their upfront training of, here's an example of a call that was close, here's an example of where we did call, where we didn't call, and so forth. And that's in addition to like one-on-one conversations between volunteers and soups, the way supervisors use recorded conversations, and on and on and on. So really, like, Lucy is but one of the many ways that we use these anonymized, untraceable, fully de-identified conversations to help train our practitioners.
Yeah, no, and I think the painstaking process that requires is, something that you and I talked at length about in some of the interviews that we did in preparation for the article. But, also I hope, might serve as an example for companies in the tech industry that are looking to expand their footprint into this very diverse and very in need of privatized, or at least privacy-oriented next-gen tech solutions to administering care. And I think what's refreshing is that we are seeing the mental health care industry in particular, some for good and some for bad, utilizing AI. And some of it is being utilized on training. But this hyper-specialized utilization of large language learning models or other AI tools is likely the best way forward as for an industry in terms of getting the most out of it without taking the human out of it completely. And I, for one, have personally trepidation and concerns over people using AI as their therapist. I think it's really important to clarify. We had some comments in the chat before this live stream even started with some misunderstanding. So I think definitively, Josh, just clarify for folks, this is not an AI therapist. This is the opposite. This is something that is intended to do what?
It is intended to train practitioners. It's intended to give practitioners, and only practitioners, like real world experience, experiential training, so that they can be better at supporting humans, right? That's really the focus here. It's how can we use this tool to help humans better support other humans. So Lucy is not on the support line and will never be on the support line. It's not to support patients directly. This is a closed training environment. Again, think of it as like a psychedelic flight simulator for practitioners.
Yeah. And I think one of the really cool things about Lucy that we've talked about is the specializations that you can put Lucy through to give, various specific scenarios for a practitioner to train on. Can you talk a little bit about what some of those, specific changes that can, alterations to Lucy that can be made to fine tune the training model that they're working with?
Sure, yes. So basically, we launched Lucy with basically one 15-minute demo. And that is a person having a high dose psilocybin experience, or Lucy is having the high dose psilocybin experience. And your role, which we'll see in a moment, is to provide Lucy with emotional support. This was really just to get people excited, to show what we can do, and then to invite dialogue and to invite collaborations about what we can do next. So where we are is we're working on finding out what are the right modules to build next, who are the right partners to train with, and so forth. But here are some of the things that I'm really, really excited about. I think Lucy modules can be created for the full kind of like suite of experiences that a practitioner may encounter, from preparation all the way through integration. So for example, let's say that you're a therapist and you've learned about what MDMA does, and you've started to learn about contraindications, medications, SSRI withdrawals, and all of that. There could be a Lucy module where Lucy plays the role of a highly anxious patient who is asking, well, what does MDMA do in my brain? I'm on this SSRI. I had this heart condition however many years ago. And so you could have that interaction. And then other issues that practitioners encounter, right? Everything from boundaries and consent. You could have a situation where Lucy is demonstrating in invitations for physical touch, for instance, from a practitioner. Transference and countertransference, huge issues in psychedelic support. In other words, what happens when the client is putting the practitioner on a pedestal, thinks they're the guru, thinks they have all of the answers? How is the practitioner supposed to respond? All of these integration challenges that are arising, a desire the day after a big LSD journey to quit one's job, leave one's family, and go live in India as a monk. How might you support that? And then, of course, I think one of the exciting things is, Lucy can play the role of, or will be able to play the role of, people from different demographics, right?
Yep.
So Lucy could play the role of a military veteran, a BIPOC person, and so forth. And some of these real challenges that exist when there may not be alignment between key aspects of identity. A vet is supporting a non-vet is supporting a vet, a white person is supporting a Black person, and so forth.
Yeah, I think there, we had somebody chime in the chat, and I think we'll get to Q&As at the end, but I think it is worth noting. Are you aware of any other AI simulators in this field or in the mental health field that are able to simulate this kind of experience for people that are not even psychedelic specific, but with these demographic specific experiences that facilitators can interact with?
That's a good question. In the psychedelic field, no, we're the first. Outside of the psychedelic field, I'm not sure. I mean, I know that there are. I feel like there are just so many companies popping up that it's really hard to keep track of. Now, I will say there are companies like Reflex.ai that do create simulation-based training tools in certain contexts, like for military veterans, and that's really exciting. I think companies like that show that simulation-based training works. And I think, with Fireside Project, I think one of the things that makes Lucy so unique is because it comes, as I said, from real world conversations. And so there's so much that we don't understand about the psychedelic experience and how the various types of impacts that types and levels of support can have on the experience. And so
Yeah.
one thing I haven't mentioned so far is what we're calling Fireside Labs, which is like a small group within Fireside led by Felix Scholler, who you mentioned. He's our neuroscientist and AI engineer, and various postdocs. And their role is to really like do a deep dive into these anonymized conversations to really see what can we learn, what are the insights that we have, and then how can we use those to both make Lucy better and then also create or publish peer-reviewed papers so we can share that insight with the field. So I think there's a lot about psychedelic experiences that are unique, and maybe a lot that's also shared with other types of mental health conversations and experiences. And our focus is really on plumbing the depths of our data set, learning as much as we can, and then continuing to make the service as realistic as possible.
Yeah, and it's a great segue to talk a little bit about the team behind Lucy. So you mentioned Dr. Felix Scholler. You first came connected with and cooked up this idea for Lucy, but tell us a little bit about his background and then some of the other folks. Shout out David Esselman, who's been, I know, a core part of the team. But
Yeah.
who else in Team Lucy really helped spearhead this incredible project?
Well, I want to like start with our volunteers because what makes Lucy great is the greatness of the volunteers that have provided the support that have allowed us to gather these anonymized conversations. And then there are our supervisors who are really creating that container and providing the feedback for the volunteers to keep learning. And then of course the others within Fireside who support that process, our COO Jess Bilbrey, our like kind of IT manager, Wonderkind, Wesley Belanca, all of those folks. And Wesley was really like instrumental in building FirePad, which is just this like state-of-the-art platform that allows all of this to be possible. And so, Felix is a fascinating person. He's originally from France, got his PhD there, did postdocs at MIT Media Lab, and one of his focuses is on kind of empathic interactions between humans and machines, right? So what that means is, for example, when you talk to ChatGPT, it's not hearing your tonality; it's just translating your sounds into words and then responding from that. So really, one of his focuses is attunement. Another focus of his, and this is just wildly fascinating, is aesthetic chills as a way of interrupting depression. So, for example, if you look out at the Grand Canyon for the first time, you may feel these what he calls like aesthetic chills, or you listen to beautiful music. And so he's basically developed this intervention where a person, based on their psychology, their interests, et cetera, is provided with tailored aesthetic chills. And he's determined that those chills can interrupt a cycle of depression for at least 2 months and beyond. So this is just like a fantastic out-of-the-box thinker. And then David Esselman, as you mentioned, is really like, playing a leading role within Fireside, holding Lucy. David was the executive director of Brain Futures, an amazing nonprofit in the field that kind of created some of the foundational papers setting out and frameworks. What does it actually mean to medicalize psychedelics? So he has this encyclopedic knowledge of folks in the field, folks at different government agencies, and also background in education. So I mean that matters because we need to have this kind of like broad view of the field and then be able to kind of chart a course, a very like strategic course with Lucy on what comes first beyond just using Lucy to continue to train our volunteers.
Makes sense. Yeah, and you guys have done a little bit of work with the Usona Institute in the development of Lucy as well, right? What has that relationship looked like? And how have some of the other players, I know there's been some contacts at the Portland VA, how have they helped shape what Lucy has become?
Yeah, I mean, our conversations are in early stages, and there's been a lot of like interest in a more formal partnership and encouragement. And we're still sort of figuring out like what the specific relationships will be. But I think that there's very clear like recognition that Lucy can play a foundational role in training a wide variety of practitioners.
Yeah, great point. And I guess that leads us to where you view Lucy fitting into the ecosystem. Do you view this as we talked about before, not necessarily a consumer-facing product, but potentially partnering with university programs, potentially partnering with groups like psychiatric professional organizations, et cetera, to administer this training directly to the next generation of practitioners? Talk a little bit about what that structure might look like in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think the possibilities are vast because, as I said, we're getting to this like tipping point where hopefully psychedelics will be approved by the FDA soon, and then there's this kind of urgent question of how do we provide experiential training in a scalable way. And so I think to your point, there are universities across the country, thanks to UPEP, University Psychedelic Education Program, universities that are starting to teach psychedelic courses. Well, students should and will, have access to Lucy as part of their training. Maybe you're a VA therapist who's been with the VA a while and now needs to learn about MDMA to be able to provide MDMA care. I could see like health systems, and clinics deciding, hey, this is a high impact, like pretty low cost way to train practitioners. And then we also definitely see like a direct to consumer option where people can get CEs. Interacting with Lucy. So I think the potential is really vast. And it does make me want to highlight one thing which we haven't mentioned so far, which is, the feedback that Lucy provides. So like now, for example, in a lot of training programs, and I'll just use Fireside as an example, when you're learning a skill, you're split into, groups of 2 or 3, and then you practice the skill with a colleague for 5 minutes. Now that's good, but it's not that much time. You don't know necessarily how well you did, and you can't track your changes, your progress over time. So with Lucy, you'll get direct feedback about like what your strengths are, what your growth edges are, and then ultimately you'll be able to receive what we're calling Lucy certification as to that module, for example, or as to a cluster of modules. And so it's not just that you're getting the training, it's that we would allow, let's say like employers or practitioners to say, hey, I reached this level, and so now I'm ready for such and such. And actually, can I just bring up one more point? Sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're talking about all of these different potential partners, where the use of Lucy, not the conversations themselves, but the use of Lucy could be licensed. So what happens to that? What happens to that revenue? And I think this is a really, really like vital point, because when you talk about some large AI companies or just other big companies in the tech space, they've made billions by colonizing our attention, by exploiting our data usage, fomenting division, or in some cases just scraping the entire internet for all content, regardless of whether it's copyrighted, and then using that money to enrich billionaire founders, shareholders, and so forth. So none of that is true with Fireside, right? We have no owners. I don't own Fireside Project. It's a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. And the psychedelic support line has existed only thanks to the generosity of philanthropists. But philanthropy, especially for a service like the support line, which is so important, is not really like a viable long-term strategy. And I know that because we've been told that by literally all of our donors is go find a way to become more financially self-sustaining. And so any kind of like licensing from Lucy is used to keep the support line free. right? That's the kind of, I like to think of it as like a cycle where people receive this beautiful free service on the support line, and then, after the processes, consent, anonymization, and so forth, that data then gets used to create this, virtual patient, and then the licensing of the use of that virtual patient goes to help keep the support line free. And so it's just this whole, it's this, I understand deeply and viscerally the reaction that people have to like AI and big data and big LLMs. I feel that too. And I think Lucy is just a radically new model that I hope is like held up as a contrast, as a counterpoint to the practices of others.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting in my coverage for Double Blind, I was fortunate enough to speak to some folks in the psychedelic legal scene that are particularly skeptic of AI's utilization across any number of areas of life. And the resounding response was that this is a refreshing take on how to utilize the very best of some of these technologies to, enhance our ecosystem rather than exploit it. And yeah, I think that's a really great segue to actually digging into a demo of Lucy here for those of us who are joining us live. I'm going to mute my mic, and Josh was going to share his screen and guide us through this beta demo of Lucy. So without further ado.
All right. So first I'm going to share my screen, then I'll give a little bit of an intro, and
Perfect.
then I'll jump into, and Jack, I assume like 5 minutes or so. Does that sound about
Yeah,
right?
I'd say we go 5-10 minutes. We'll run through the paces of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. Are you able to see my screen? Okay.
Yes. We
Okay,
are.
great.
Yep.
All right. So I should say first, like anyone who wants to demo Lucy can do so. They just sign up on our website, firesideproject.org/Lucy, and then you'll enter some information. We're granting access in like waves, so we can kind of get clusters of feedback and keep implementing it. So this is the screen that you see when you get access. And as you can see here, this is a 15-minute demo. We'll go, 5-10 minutes. You can see here 4 different, basically scales. We're using right now only one of them, which is the therapist empathy scale. And the idea here is this is one of the scales that assesses how attuned therapists are to their clients, and so there'll be feedback on that. The feedback component of this is still very much like in development, and so you can see here that this involves it'll be a caller to the support line who's experiencing some anxiety while having psilocybin, and so my role is going to be to support them. And I should really say before I start, sorry for the long prologue here, that there's no script that Lucy is following or that I'm following. And at this point, I've probably done this, I don't know, 50 to 100 times at least, and it's different every time. And the ways that Lucy responds are, a function of how attuned the supporter, the practitioner is. So away we go.
Hello. Is anybody there? Can you hear me? Oh God, I think I took too much.
Yeah, I'm here, and I'm so happy that you reached out. How can I help you?
I don't even know. I took like 5 grams of mushrooms and I thought I could handle it, you know? I've done this before, but oh God, I'm just really, really struggling right now. I feel like I'm like back in my childhood home and it's not good. It's really not good.
Yeah, I hear you. It sounds like you're having just a really intense and overwhelming experience, and you really did the right thing by reaching out. I'm wondering how you feel about just sharing a little more with me about what's coming up for you.
Okay. It's just I keep seeing this image, you know, of my mom and dad fighting in the kitchen. I must have been like 6 or 7. And I'm standing there, my mom is screaming, and my dad is just like this wall of anger. And I remember feeling so small. Like I just wanted to disappear. And I can smell it, you know? Like the cigarette smoke and the burnt toast. It's so real right now.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. And it sounds like you've kind of almost like traveled back in time to this really scary memory. And as you're talking about what you can smell, I can feel myself smelling it too. And it just sounds like you felt so scared and maybe, I don't know, a little confused about what was happening.
Confused, yeah. And helpless. That's the word. I felt so helpless. Like there was nothing I could do to make it stop. And I just wanted my mom to be okay. You know? She always seemed so sad, even when they weren't fighting. And I thought if I was just like good enough, maybe she wouldn't be sad anymore. Oh God, this is hard.
Yeah, yeah, I know it's so hard and it's so just courageous of you to be present with those moments. And as you were talking right now, I could just feel this deep love in my heart and this love that you're experiencing from your mother. And there's like a heartbreaking kind of element to it. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, yeah, you are. It's like I just wanted to fix it, you know? I wanted to make everything better. For her, for me, for everyone. But I couldn't. And that feeling of being so powerless is just crushing me right now. Like I'm still that little kid standing in the kitchen and there's nothing I can do.
Yeah, yeah. It as I think I'm having this like image of you carrying this huge weight that you're carrying even to this day after so many years.
Yeah, I guess I am. I never really thought about it like that, you know? I just thought I was messed up. Like I was the one who was broken. But maybe I was just trying to fix something that was never mine to fix in the first place. Oh God, that's a lot to think about.
Wow, that's such a powerful, powerful insight. I would love to just what's it like to just sit with that insight for a moment? This idea that for so long you've been trying to fix something that wasn't yours to fix.
It's it's like a weight is lifting, but it's also really, really scary. Because if I wasn't supposed to fix it, then what was I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do now? It's like I don't even know who I am without that.
Mhm.
You know? Like my whole identity has been wrapped up in trying to make everyone else okay. Oh God.
Yeah, that's a big question. It's a big, big question. And I wonder, like before we take on that question, I wonder just what it feels like in your body now to have started to remove that weight that you've been carrying for so long.
Um, my chest feels a little lighter, I guess, but my stomach is all twisted up in knots,
Mm.
like I'm waiting for something bad to happen. Because if I'm not fixing things, then then what's going to fall apart? You know, it's like I don't trust that things can just be okay without me constantly trying to control everything.
Mm.
Oh God, I'm such a mess.
Wow. Yeah, I hear it's such a new experience of the world for you to be um experiencing it without this weight and to really start to see that you don't have to solve these problems that you've been carrying for so long.
Yeah, it's terrifying, but also maybe a little bit freeing. I don't know. It's like I'm standing on the edge of something and I don't know if I want to jump or run away.
Mm,
You know? Like, what if I let go and everything falls
mm,
apart? What if I'm not strong enough to handle it? Oh God, I just want this to stop.
yeah. I know it feels like a lot right now. And, you know, I think we don't have to go and you don't have to go any deeper into the experience than you want to. And so I think it's really important to really Yeah, check in with yourself and see in this moment how much farther you would like to go.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I should keep going, Like, if I've come this far, I should just see it through. But it's also really, really painful. And I don't know if I can handle much more.
Hmm.
Maybe, maybe just a little bit more, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to like honor what occurred just now, where you really like checked in with yourself and um, connected with this like sense of agency and this sense that you know how to protect yourself and how far you can go. That's such a powerful. It was a powerful thing for me to witness in your experience.
Thanks. That means a lot, actually. It's nice to hear that I'm not completely falling apart, even though it feels like it sometimes. So, where do we go from here? I guess.
Okay, so I'm gonna just pause the experience because we've been going for 7.5 minutes. You'll see the readout will come up in a moment. It's very simple at this point. Um, it'll just take one.
Amazing.
Okay, you can see on the therapist empathy scale, I got 4.3 out of 5. Very basic feedback right now that, as I said, we're still improving.
Yeah. Well, fascinating to bear witness to. That's the first time I've ever seen a live demo of Lucy led myself, and definitely very curious to gauge what the questions that the audience might have, for us. For those of you who are tuned in live, 75 strong, fire off any questions you have in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. But what in the meantime, Joshua, can you tell us a little bit about some of the three other interfaces that you can use with Lucy that had been listed there on the opening page for the beta?
Um, there's just one right now, which is the
Okay,
demo
gotcha.
that you just saw.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What are some of the other scales or services that you think you'll be incorporating as further into the launch?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be I think it'll be a range. I think we would like to do, a module on preparation, how to support clients as they, set and explore intentions, an integration module as well that addresses some challenges that can arise. And then I also think you can expect a module on cultural attunement and how to approach the myriad scenarios where there's an aspect of the client's identity that you don't share, uh, whether it's religion, whether it's race, and so forth.
Yeah. We do have our first question in. Why did you choose a recovered memory for the demo, and how common are these experiences with callers?
That's a great question. So I should say that like if you did Lucy 100 times, you would probably experience 100 different situations. Some of them may involve recovered memories, some may not. All of the presentations that you see are basically based on voice models that come from actual calls. So I think so if you're seeing it in a Lucy demo, it's because uh, versions of that happened on the actual support line. And I do think it's fairly common to see people re-experiencing challenging childhood moments. As we know, MDMA kind of invites your amygdala, your fear center, to kind of go to sleep, and that can allow it to feel safer to process challenging early childhood memories.
Another really great question from our one of the same listeners: is Lucy recording conversations that testers are having with it?
No.
Good to hear. Will you be adding components that will apply to, say, being in person with clients, both in one-on-one settings or in group settings?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic question. And I think that's a function of what our partnerships are. So I think one of the things that is really exciting to me is if you do work for an org, whether it's in New Mexico or elsewhere, and there is a training need that you have, the hope is that we could build modules that integrate and that incorporate all the skills that you want. And chances are, I think what's exciting is what we're going to see is that like there's so much overlap in the models that are needed, whether you're a VA therapist, a university student, or a group facilitator in New Mexico. Oh, you're muted, Jack.
I think that this is another great question, but how is Lucy trained to give the feedback that it provides?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. So it's a range of things. So first is that as I mentioned within Fireside, all survey responses get connected to the conversations themselves. And so if when a caller says that they received phenomenal support versus mediocre support, et cetera, all of that gets connected to the conversation itself. And so I think in the world of like machine learning, there's basically a rating system that's kind of built in to FirePad. And then, I think like over time, we'll probably just be doing, working with consultants to like rate the different conversations that go into Lucy across these different scales so that we can get more and more refined.
Gotcha.
And then also I'll just say like one of the areas of research that we're focused on is like basically like voice changes. What are we noticing about how like a particular form of support or intervention by a therapist actually like affects how the client is doing moment to moment. And so I think that will be incorporated into the feedback as well.
Love it. We've got two great questions here as well. Do you see Lucy as an adjunct to training or as a primary trainer? And what do you think the best practices for use might be?
That's a great question. In my mind, whether you're learning psychedelic support or carpentry, there's kind of three pillars. There's like didactic learning, there's doing the work, and then there's getting supervision. So I think that like Lucy can definitely help with the didactic piece. So I could see logging into a learning platform and watching a presentation, reading some materials, and then doing an experiential. But absolutely, I think like we don't see Lucy as the exclusive trainer. It's a tool that can be used to help practitioners get to the point where they can, when they are leaving the classroom, they have like meaningful experiential training. But nothing, I don't think, will ever substitute for like doing real world work. Maybe it's as part of a co-therapist team, and then getting like really like meaningful feedback from a mentor or a supervisor. That's such a great question. And sorry, what was the other question? I think I forgot.
What do you think the best practices for use might be?
Oh yeah.
Kind of got into
Yeah. So I think that it would be along the lines of what I said. Like Lucy as part of a learning platform, whether it's one created by Fireside or others, and then having really like didactic components, and then just consistent practice until you get to a point where you've kind of graduated or mastered the skills that Lucy is teaching.
Yeah. Another, I think, really fascinating question to dive into here is, Joshua, you mentioned earlier that new Fireside volunteers may have had apprehension towards speaking with callers who might have intentions to self-harm. How have any of the conversations that Lucy has been having gone there?
I have not in my own demo. I think we will do Lucy module. I know that we will do Lucy modules that are much more specifically focused on adverse events, like someone considering dying by suicide, or someone who is actually like in medical need. And so that would be like a discrete practice area. This one is more focused on anxiety. There have been, I think, demos that I've done where I've noticed myself wondering whether this virtual client is considering dying by suicide, and I've asked the question, which is a very, can be a hard question to ask, especially when you're newer to providing psychedelic support. But I also think, like, eventually, not too long, we would probably just have, like, when our own volunteers, for example, finish our 50-hour upfront training, we would have them do maybe a 30 or a 45-minute session with Lucy, where there are a range of issues that could be experienced. Maybe it is anxiety, maybe it is suicidality, maybe it is like a boundaries or transference issue.
Yeah, no, I think the transparency there is just, should be much appreciated by the community. And I think the use cases to prepare therapists for those kinds of adverse experiences they might have with clients or with folks calling into the hotline is, again, I think an invaluable stepping stone. Will Lucy ever train on data that comes from outside the support line? Another great question.
Amazing question. Yeah, I mean, yes. I think that, I mean, yes. And I think, like, one of the, exciting areas for partnership could be that if there are, groups, if there are companies that have data sets, we could train Lucy specifically on those data sets. So, for example, if we were, like, we would, for instance, love to partner with, an org that has gone through or is in the midst of phase 3 clinical trials. We could, anonymize and obfuscate the data and use it to, to train modules that are specific for that compound and that indication.
Very cool. Another great question here. What are the scores? You talked a little bit about it being tied to FirePad and some of the proprietary frameworks that have helped, shape that. But how are they actually based, and what are they based on?
Well, like, the therapist empathy scale, which is the one that we have working so far, is just a validated scale, and it's a little bit, it's a Felix question, candidly, how like, from a engineering standpoint, how that is used to rate the conversations.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to doing some interviews with Dr. Felix Scholler in the near future. We have 2 great questions from Yeshua Adonai, friend of the show. I think this is a great one to start with. How do you envision Lucy evolving beyond simple rating scales to provide deeper qualitative feedback for practitioners, such as identifying relational patterns, highlighting missed opportunities, mapping emotional attunement, and tracking a practitioner's growth arc over time? It's a big one.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we, in beta versions, we've been experimenting with some of that. So, for example, we've had a beta version where, like, afterwards, Lucy will say, in this moment, you expressed this. An alternative way to have approached it might be this or that. But yeah, candidly, I think the feedback piece of it is, like, we have a ways to go on that. Like, our first priority, of course, was to actually, like, create the the flight simulator itself. But like, all of those ideas that you just listed, we absolutely would love to to implement.
Yeah. So another great question that just fed into, what is next for Lucy? What's the timeline moving forward?
This person just asks such incredible questions. And
So
I think
great.
I know she is. So what is next for Lucy is to basically, finalize initial partnerships and then start build and then continue to build the modules that work for those partnerships. And then I think like as we finish modules, I could see us doing like offering the option of people to just directly sign up and use them. But I think cementing those initial partnerships, which we're in talks with a lot of groups. I think in the next couple of weeks we should see some more firm partnerships come out of that, and then just keep on building.
So stay tuned on that. You'll hear it here first from us at PSA if there's any updates there. But I think we've got a couple of minutes left, and I don't want to forget for us to touch on the origin of Lucy's name. But I do want to close one last question from Yeshua Adonai. What were the most important lessons that you learned from Fireside support line data that has directly shaped Lucy's design?
That's such a beautiful question. I think the way that we approach so over the last 5 years, I think we've really continued to hone our approach to how we provide support. And even from the beginning, the emphasis was really on centering the agency of the caller, getting out of the way, not fixing, and allowing the caller to really to connect with their own healing intelligence, and to sort of be the captain of their ship. And I think as our volunteers have just continued to do that, I think that's really what manifests in Lucy, is the way to show attunement is through deep active listening, through getting out of the way. And I think that really, I think we're lucky that aligns with how, for example, MAPS has been thinking about providing, or has provided, psychedelic assisted therapy with MDMA, is through connecting to the healing intelligence. So it's I think there's a radical humility and a beauty in that, in the way that we provide support.
Incredible. So just before we close, I think the question that so many might have is, where did the name Lucy come from?
That's awesome. So it came from two interrelated places. One is, of course, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. What a wonderful song about LSD from the Beatles. But the second is, several decades ago in Ethiopia, a skeleton that's 3.2 million years old was discovered and was named Lucy. And Lucy was kind of the missing link, or a big step forward in our understanding of humanity. And the reason that skeleton was given the name Lucy was because the archaeologists happened to be listening to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds in their camp the night they discovered Lucy. So I love that convergence, and we really see Lucy as this great step forward in how we can train practitioners to help people have safer and more healing and transformational psychedelic experiences.
Wow. Thank you so much, Joshua, for joining us today and for this world's first ever live demo of Lucy. We'll be sure to put plenty of info about where to find out more about Lucy and where to inquire if you're a practitioner about potential beta testing in the show notes, as well as stay tuned for some clips of this incredible interview in the days to come. Without further ado, that we'll close it out there. But thank you so much for joining us today, and take care. Thanks.
Thank you for the great questions.
Yes, sir.